And good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us for another show. And happy to have two of our local state representatives alongside today. Representative Lynn Dickinson, representing Franklin 2, about 2/3 of St. Albans town, and Representative Casey Toof, representing Franklin 8, wards 5 and 6 in the city. And tell me again what part of the town is.
So we have Hill Farm Estates, and it's the easiest way to explain it is it's Route 7 to Interstate 89. Pretty much everything in between there, south of the city.
Well, and I interviewed Representative Joe Luno a week or two ago, covering the who happens to be my state rep in Ward 1 in St. Albans City. He's got wards 1 and 4. So again, I trust the state Republican Party treats you folks well. Franklin County, of course, 13-member legislative delegation, and with Joe Luno having defeated Mike McCarthy in the last election, 13 out of 13 Republicans. But again, let's start with the last election. I mean, Republicans are, again, still a seemingly popular Republican governor, Phil Scott, but with the Democratic supermajority, it sounds like Republicans were not having a real good time in the legislature for a while. But that finally changed with the last election. Lynn, and again, you're the senior, most veteran member of the local legislative delegation, easily, in fact. Anybody close to you?
Yes. I've been there now 17 years.
17
started in 2009, got elected in 2008.
Wow.
And there's only a handful of us who came in at that time that are still left.
Are still left in Montpelier.
In Montpelier, from all around the
Sure.
state. But yeah, well, Carolyn Brannigan was there. She's been there longer in the number of years, but she took a break because she had a health issue. So,
Right.
but she's come back. So
And you're on appropriations?
I'm on appropriations. I have served on commerce. After 6 years there, I went to institutions, corrections and institutions, which was, of course, we have a correctional center in my district.
Indeed.
Then I went to judiciary for 2 years, and then I went back to commerce, I think, for 4 years.
Wow.
In there was COVID, so that was an interesting way to work. And now this is now my second term on appropriations.
Certainly a key House committee, so happy to be there. Good committee, certainly a very important, obviously, committee.
Yeah, and they all kind of intersect. The things that I did and all the other committees intersect with appropriations.
Yeah.
And we have specialties that we do on, you don't do everything on you have certain issues that you deal with and certain departments that you deal with.
Yeah.
And some of them are brand new to me, but some of them are things that I have worked with in the past. So
again, with the Democratic supermajority, was this last, since that happened with the last election, things better for Republicans? Is it a better climate, or I can only assume things got better for you folks?
Yes. Casey might really have a better comment. Yeah.
I'll ask Casey about this.
Yeah, so
or whatever.
we had a very good election in 2024. We got another statewide elected in John Rogers.
Ken, were you before you were a campaign?
Yeah, I was campaign manager, so we were pretty excited about that. But we also picked up 6 seats in the Senate and 20 seats in the
20
House.
seats in the House.
Which, for the first time that I've ever been there, this is my 7th year. I'm going to go into my 8th year. We actually have. It's more about. It's less about having Republicans and Republican ideologies in there.
Yeah.
It's more about balance within the legislature.
Yeah.
Because you say we have 13 up here in Franklin County, but we only have 56 or 57 Republicans in the House and only 13 in the Senate. But last year was 6 and 37. So we were able to a couple of things last year. I think that hurt the other party, and what helped us in our cause was there was a $10 billion clean heat standard that was passed. Property taxes increased in St. Albans City by 15.1%, and across the state at 13.8%. So these ideologies we were able to introduce bills this year to work on a foundation formula in education to try to change how we fund our education system, make it a little bit cheaper for our Vermont residents. And we also had, we were able to defeat the clean heat standard, and that's kind of going away.
Well, we really didn't defeat it. We didn't. They just.
You were hoping for a vote to have.
We never got.
There was a need to have a vote in January of 25, or within 2 weeks, I think, of going back.
Yeah.
And because we had 56 people, which is the most Republicans I have served with in the House, since I've been there.
Really?
And 47, 48, and then it went to 52, and then it went down to 30 something. But this was the most Republicans. We're not a majority. We can't repeal anything. But we certainly had an impact because it changed the whole dynamic of the institutions. We can override vetoes very easily. The Senate had 13, which is pretty close to half.
Yeah.
And so we are now a force that can have an impact. We had more committee chairs. We had
You have Matt Walker, a Republican from
Yes.
Swanton, picked up, pulled off the
Yeah.
House Transportation Committee chairmanship.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
some vice chairs in the
There were
Delegate.
a lot of vice chairs this year, which was really helpful for our.
Yeah, and it just changed the nature. So when it came time for this clean heat standard to come up to be approved,
Yeah.
it was supposed to have been a study, but it was all baked into the cake. They were ready to go.
Yeah.
But when it came time for that, they chose not to put it up for a vote because it was going to either be voted down
Yeah.
or it was going to be vetoed and we'd override the veto. And that kind of thing, that kind of atmosphere made all the difference.
Yeah.
And we were able to work close with the governor and the administration on key issues that we thought were important. So like what Lynn alluded to is that when a bill came to the House, if it did not have the governor's support, it was more likely than not it was more likely to not be introduced onto the floor for a vote because they knew
Not even
that
be introduced.
Yeah, because they knew it would become it would be vetoed. So a lot of that type of legislation stayed on the sidelines, and we were able to pass some important bills, an education reform bill that I spoke about, and we also passed a CHIPS bill, which is
Been the governor's thing to do a TIF or an individual TIF thing that would work, and it's really geared primarily toward helping to go and build infrastructure. One of the things that makes it difficult outside of our larger communities, the cities, is that we don't have public water and sewer. And so those things can be, and they're expensive. They're really expensive. There's some federal money, there's some state money, but a lot of it is bonding. And you can't build housing. You can't have employers come in. You can't have apartments. You can't have a lot of things without that infrastructure. So, and there's other things that CHIP can be used for as well. This is a way to use that like you do with the TIF and take the improved grand list value of that and take part of that and use it to pay back the bond.
So some of our initiatives that we spoke about in the election that resonated well with our voters were housing, education reform, and public safety. And because of our numbers this year, that's what we were able to pass those laws to focus on those kinds of things. So I think it was a really refreshing year. Lynn, this is the first time she's had that many. It's the first time I had this many in 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's been really productive I think Vermonters are in a better position going forward than they were before.
Yeah. We also got the military pension, which was this is like for 10 years we've been pushing this. There's a couple of people been working really hard on it. Lisa Hango was part of the military caucus.
I mentioned Lisa Hango. I know she's a big issue for her.
It's been a big issue in commerce. It was always seen as a workforce development issue.
Why was it so tough? It just seems like a no-brainer to at least a lot of people.
Because, there were people who said, oh, we're not going to go and give tax breaks to four-star generals. Well, we're not getting four-star generals. We're going over to Fort Drum and with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and National Guard and other people and saying, when it comes time to retire, think of coming to Vermont.
Yeah.
They're usually in their prime employment years, they have families, but we were told point blank that the first thing they do when they get their separation package is they pull out the slip that lists all the states where your pensions are tax exempt, and we're not on that. And there's a lot of states on that.
And of course, same with Social Security, although
We've a little bit of progress with that. Yeah. We've nibbled away, but this was a major thing.
Insane to me also.
Yeah.
To be taxing Social Security.
Right. We're like one of three up until this year. I think we're like one of 3 states that still tax both.
Yeah.
Is that right? One of 3 states?
So the military pension wasn't just for people who are military, Army, Navy. It also was the other 8 uniformed services that we have, like the public service, and other parts of the government public service that we have that are uniformed.
Yeah.
And they got it as well. But there are people who really would like to come back we're from Vermont.
Yeah.
And they want to have them in the Guard. It's the whole, and we need the jobs. We have the jobs. We need the people, and they would be happy to come back here if they could.
I think
really. So you think there are a bunch of people like that?
Yes.
Yeah. The average age, I believe, was in the 40s, early 40s, and those are people working age. They would retire from the military, but they would still be able to open a business, go work build a house, start a family, put kids in our school system. And the real important thing is that
Work at the airport.
Yeah, work at the airport.
Airport mechanics. Other people work for Charlie Boys, or other people as technicians.
And we pushed for this, and for 7 years we worked really hard on. For my 7 years I've been in, we've been really pushing for this. I remember the debates. One of the funny things was some of the things that they were talking about within their committee on why they would not support this or why they were cautious about supporting it. It was like, well, what about this organization or this group of people? And we're like, okay, give everyone a tax break. That's where our mind is like, if people come looking for tax breaks, let's give it to them. Vermonters are asking for tax breaks. Why are we not giving them to them? So we were very happy that it wasn't the exact bill we wanted. It wasn't what the governor had drawn up, but it was enough it was a good compromise, and it got us to a start where we're giving people the relief that hopefully will be a workforce development tool to bring more people into Vermont.
Yeah. The affordability issue, a huge issue, and it sounds like that was probably the biggest issue with Republicans making the gains you made. And tell me if I'm crazy. It just seems like, it just some of the issues you're dealing with, healthcare, all this stuff, just seem almost overwhelming to me.
Yes.
But, hearing affordability talk and got to make Vermont an easier place to live, it sure seems to me, am I crazy, that the best you can realistically hope for is to minimize future property tax increases? I mean, can you tell me, have you got any realistic hope you could make it better? I mean, reduce people's property taxes down the road?
Well, we do have a bill that we passed this year, and Casey is on the education committee.
Right.
So yeah, I introduced the bill, which was H
454.
Which basically turned into Act 73.
73. And we worked on that from beginning to the end.
Right.
We stayed an extra 2 weeks just to get this passed.
And boy, even at the end, it looked shaky.
It looked shaky. It was tough when it was leaving the House. We had to run around and work people to get votes because it wasn't a guarantee that this was going to pass.
Right.
So we worked our tails off to get this passed just to keep it alive. And then the Senate worked on it, and the Senate kind of, at the very end, they scratched everything they did, and then they introduced
Pretty much
what we
the
passed.
version.
And so it's the good news is that it puts a foundation formula in. There's a lot to this bill that's contingent on this next session. This next legislative session is going to be one of our most important when it comes to this, because there is a task force right now that are building our maps for what the new school districts will look like.
As we speak, and that's a huge issue. What, 119 school districts?
119
And the
school
governor
districts.
wanted that knocked down to 5.
He wanted it down to 5. I think within the consensus within our committee, we were looking for around 12 to 20.
Yeah.
I was looking.
Those are
more-
SUs.
Yeah,
That wasn't districts.
Yeah, those are the
SUs.
supervisors. Yeah, sorry,
Supervisory.
the difference.
You got
districts
sometimes you
and committees.
got districts within the SU, like we always had. Like
Yeah.
that.
So if this, and those maps are due to us before we meet in December for our tax meeting, which will be by the end of January is the hope that we'll have these maps ready to go. And then everything has to fall into place after that. So we still have a long way to go with this. We're being very cautious because we know that this is a sensitive topic. Schools are nervous. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
But the important thing, and Lynn alluded to it, is that we're focusing on school districts and supervisory unions, not the schools themselves right now, which is really important because we want to give kids the best opportunity that we can afford in the state of Vermont. We currently spend $2.3 billion to educate.
That's with a B.
Yeah, $2.3 billion.
That's for
The
80.
first time, going back a number of years, obviously, when I first started hearing, Vermont state government costing in the billions, I think I said, no, that can't. And state government total is now about what, 9?
It's 9.1 billion. Yes, we were in
Kind
the
of
8
blown
billion
over people's
range.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went from 4 billion to 6 billion, and then of course we had all that money. That was easy to go to 8 billion. A lot of it was federal money. Now this year's
9.1,
budget was 9. Well, this one for next fiscal year, the one we're in right now, is 9.1 billion, and 2.3 billion of that is for K-12 education.
Wow.
And that has grown exponentially since I've been there as well.
People go crazy. I mean, with declining enrollment.
Yeah, when I was in school a few years ago, about 23 years ago, we had 122,000 students.
Yeah.
And now we're at 84,000.
83,000 and dropping.
So that's
Yes.
down about a third.
Yeah, and we're projected to lose another 10 to 15,000 in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's, that's part of this is all the things we talked about. Housing is one of the biggest issues. If we can't, we need about 41,000 units.
I was going to ask you about
Yeah.
this. Does that seem like seems like an accurate stat to you guys?
Well, I don't know about the housing
Yeah.
statistics.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that people who do housing have. What I would like to say about the school thing is that we have lost 35,000 students since 1997.
Oh,
It's now about 83,000. When you take 2.3 billion, you divide it by the 83,000, it comes to like 27,700 per student,
okay.
which is really high.
And one of the highest in the country, correct?
Yes, it is.
We have the high, yeah,
Second highest or second highest or something?
Yeah.
Per capita
per capita.
spending on
This is
students.
just on what we spend. It doesn't even count what we have is for the adults in the schools per student. That ratio, we are probably the highest there. It's like 3.1, 3 to 1. It used to be 4 to 1. But it's a very high percentage of adults. So we've had, this is an example. This is the example of the loss of, they used to hand this out, when Steve Klein was head of the Joint Fiscal Office every December. And this is 1997 at the peak.
Nah.
And this was down till here to 2016, and it was expected to go up around, level off in 2025.
Really, one loss?
But it didn't, because the Great Recession that we had in 2008 to 2010,
Yeah.
the population decline continued. And the same thing with COVID. It's just, the whole thing is just declining more. So we've had this ski slope, this Black Diamond ski slope going down with enrollment, but the number of people employed has gone up.
It's coming on.
So
that means the cost has gone up.
Yeah.
Yeah, 75% of your cost is salaries and benefits. So it's and the problem is that we have a lot of schools that I think they project $6 billion in deferred maintenance, which makes sense.
That's a good, right. I occasionally hear reference to that. Six billion.
$6 billion, they're all in Bs. The issue is that we really don't need all these spaces in all these schools. And before we go and start doing money on buildings and schools and consolidating, we really need to figure out what we need for these students. We need, and the other thing is that this redistricting and whatever it is we're doing, this is really no different than what we did with Act 46. Act 46 in 2015, when we tried to change the number of supervisory unions and try to consolidate some of the schools. An example here would be what they did with Berkshire, Montgomery, Bakersfield, Sheldon, and they created a different format of how you put these schools together.
And for that matter, St. Albans City in town, BFA in Fairfield for that matter.
Yeah, we did that, and because of that, we created the Maple Run instead of it being. It's the same. It basically took our supervisory union and created a supervisory district,
Okay.
and it made Fairfield out of a tuition town and made it go to BFA.
Okay.
That was the impact. But this is a reapportionment issue. We do this every 10 years as part of our reapportionment, which is highly political. This isn't quite as political because we're not electing people to office for it, but that's what we're going to be doing. So this isn't like brand new stuff we've never done.
No, and all the details for that is, like I said, in this next session, we're going to have to figure out those details of what the governance looks like and, what we're going to, how that's going to look, what are the restrictions, what students can and can't do, what do those lines look like. So I'm really
confident you can pull that. It sounds like it's obviously a huge, difficult issue.
Yeah, it's
It
going
is
to be tough.
It is emotional and it is difficult. But like I say, we did this with the union high schools back in the 60s. None of us were here then, of course, but they did it successfully with that. I mean, and I remember moving here in 1973, and all I heard about was how terrible MVU was because it had Swanton High School, Franklin High School, Highgate. Well, obviously they couldn't continue that way. And then Old St. Anne's was there. But they put it together and it made more sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, North Country Union High School is an example up in the Northeast Kingdom. There's 11 towns. It's the largest geographic area of anybody in the state for a union high school. And they have the largest school board because everybody has to have at least one representative plus others based on population. And North Country had a lot of facilities and activities that we did not have down here, even at BFA. I mean, they had 8 AP courses when my kids were there
All right.
30 years ago. And, it was I mean, I remember going up the ski lift with a guy from Oregon, and we all talked about the things that we would do to improve things. He was very smart, very capable.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have good people who want to continue. Someone like Lisa Hango, or at Maple Run, when we made BFA into a union high school, back those now, it's a few years ago, 2004, we had existing school board members who joined and were part of that school board. So you're going to get experienced people who are going to go in and do this.
Yeah. The vote on H-454 is at about 2-1. I mean, there was very strong feelings, obviously, on...
I think it only passed when it left the House. It only passed by
much closer than that.
it was very.
It was a voice vote.
8.
It was a voice vote.
Oh, when it passed.
In fact, that was very controversial. Right. It finally passed on a voice vote.
So that was kind of an interesting story. So I spoke with the speaker on this, and there were some people saying that she had rushed the vote. I don't think. I
don't think
was
she
sitting
rushed the
there.
vote, no.
I think what happened was people were waiting for somebody else to speak first.
Yeah.
She gave the ample amount of time for people to get up and speak, and I think people were kind of froze, like, "Oh, we're ready for the vote right now," and nobody said anything, and so she went to the vote, and people voiced their opinion how upset they were. So we did meet in leadership with the speaker, and we talked about it. And so what she allowed was debate. Normally, when you debate something, it has to be on the question at hand.
Yeah.
So she asked that we allow the debate on, shall we send this to the governor, to allow debate to talk about the bill itself. Because the question is, shall we send it to the governor? You're only supposed to argue if we should or should not send it to the governor. You shouldn't be talking about the bill that you just passed.
Yeah.
So she did allow that. And we spoke, we're like, okay, people want to speak and they feel like they weren't given the time. Let's give them the time. So whatever right that was wrong, I don't think there was any wrong that was done by the speaker, anyone in that building. I just think that everyone was caught off guard and didn't know when they were supposed to speak. And everyone was able to say their piece about the bill. And it did pass. It went by a voice vote, but then we did.
Well, conference committee votes are up or down. You just do it. You can't make any changes, no amendments, you just have to vote on it. And so this was a conference committee vote.
Yep.
And it was a conference committee that we did that one day that was presented on June 16th, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so the rumor was that nobody really wanted a roll call because people didn't want to be on the record.
Sure.
Because if you have a bunch of small communities in your district and you know this is something we need to do,
Yeah.
you probably don't want to be voting no. And you don't want to be voting yes. So the question was, would there be somebody who stood up and asked for a roll call? And nobody did.
No.
And there was a pregnant pause. And
That seems so surprising to me. Were you surprised that nobody?
no, I wasn't surprised.
You weren't?
I was surprised that there was not the debate.
Democrat.
But I was because I knew that there was people did not want the roll call. I come from the school of thought. I think everything should be under on the record. I pushed for electronic voting for a few years now because the people deserve to know what we're doing and how we're voting down there. But Lynn's right. There was a talk about it, but there was a member from Burlington, I think.
Yeah. Troy Hedrick got up
He
and got up.
called for the roll call.
Really?
And
He's a progressive from Burlington. He wanted to talk about the merits, and it just sort of went through. Nobody stood up and asked, basically you stand up and you ask to be called on, and then you can say whatever your comment is. Or you can just sit in your seat and ask for a roll call. It's not hard, and you have to certain number of people have to affirm that. So once you get that, it's only like 5 people. So it's not hard. But the point of it is that once we passed it, and it was passed by a voice vote, then it was a matter of, did we want to go and send it to the governor? Well, it's sort of academic. I mean, you don't have a lot of choice. It's
Do you have any choice?
no, as far as I know.
well, the reason we wanted to send it to him is because if we didn't vote to suspend our rules to send it to him,
It would have taken more days.
it would have taken, I think, 3 days for it to go to his office, and we would have had to stay for an extra 3 days. So instead of us having to come back for 3 days just for this thing to go on the calendar like that, we vote to send
That's
it
right. It
to
was to
suspend our
suspend
rules.
the rules,
We need
yes.
3/4 of the body to vote yes to suspend our rules, or is it 2/3 for rules?
It's 3/4 for rule suspension. It's 2/3 for the veto.
That was another voice vote on that? Or
Nope,
was
that went
an
90,
actual-
Well, it was 96 to 45. And that was the one she agreed to let us do a roll call on this. Long discussion up at the podium. And
Oh, and you know what? That wasn't a rule suspension because of that.
no, it's just the deliver to the
deliver to the governor.
Yeah, just deliver to
We
the
can do that
governor.
if we want to, or we can wait the 3 days and we decided to.
Well, one of the people got up. What happened? Of course, this is all political weeds, you know.
Yeah.
We had a person who was
very
against
interesting
this
stuff, though.
thing, and she asked for a point of order saying that we hadn't followed the rules because there was stuff in the conference report that was not dealt with in the regular bills that came before the House and Senate, which
Yeah.
I didn't. They did the same thing in the Senate. Tanya Bohosky in the Senate had the same point of order, and then that was determined not to be valid. She didn't take that point of order well. She said no,
I'll take it.
because there really wasn't. There was so much stuff in here that had been discussed in at least 3 committees.
Yeah.
You know, there was Ways and Means, Education, and Government Ops.
But the education thing, and I got the Chronicle still, I think, a very decent weekly paper out of Orleans County. And I've never met Rep. Leanne Harple. Actually, I saw her husband play music in East
Oh, yeah.
Fairfield a
Yeah.
while back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sounds like a very serious-minded. Sounds like she kind of went back and forth. But I did see her long kind of dissent about it.
Yep.
But it sounds like she struggled with that bill quite a bit, as I'm sure.
She sits right next to me.
No, really.
She's a freshman legislator.
Yeah.
But she's very passionate about it. She's an educator.
And she's an educator or something.
Yep. And so she's really worried, and a lot of people are really worried, especially in the Northeast Kingdom.
Just about closed small schools.
Closing small
down,
schools.
long bus rides.
Long bus
whatever.
rides. And we already have, like, if you look at Essex County, I think there's only Canaan. I don't know if any other school.
Yeah.
That's for my
Concord.
campus. Yeah, Canaan's, of course, the main. Highland Pond, of course, is in there.
Yep. Concord has closed. There's no real high school in there. And
Granby's up there.
Granby's up there. We were looking like, and there were some things within the bill that was like, they can't go across the lines. Well, we need to have, there's going to be exceptions for a lot of the.
In fact, I think that is happening. I think Canaan and Colebrook, I think there is some interstate
Well, we have
thing.
that, yeah.
And there are some
Yeah.
kids in like Newport that go to Stansted College across into Quebec. But we've looked at all those things, and they're really worried about long bus rides and closing like smaller schools, and we get that. That's something we have to be mindful of. There will be exceptions for those towns in the Northeast Kingdom.
Yeah.
Where we're looking for savings is not necessarily the exception of the rule, but where we can see those savings in places like Franklin County. We have 5 high schools that could share resources that you could see, like even simple savings, like using the same person to buy paper from.
Yeah.
And school supplies from. You can
That's
find those
just not
savings.
happening now, or not.
There
nearly
can
as
be.
much as it
We
should
set
be.
up a thing called BOCES last year, which is the Board of Cooperative Educational
Education.
Services.
Inside New York, I'm used to that.
Yeah, the
BOCES, if you're from New York,
Life
yeah.
in the north
Yeah, and-
country of New York.
And so
Yeah.
within this bill, we'll be able to implement BOCES language that's like, that allows schools, because they typically wouldn't. They would go to their central office and they would make their contacts with things like that. And that's a very small amount of money. We're not talking, you're not going to save billions doing that, but these are little tiny things. Just sharing teachers, sharing resources, coaches, things like that can inflate budgets within your own SDs and SUs. They'll be able to share those across larger areas.
So can you picture education funding at $2.3 billion? Can you picture that actually going down, or at least not increasing much? Or
Well, you don't
dreaming
want it
think
to
that would go
increase.
down?
You don't want it to increase. I mean, one of the problems is that if you don't go and do something right now,
Yeah.
right away, you will have the same scenario that we had at the end of 24, in May of 24, when we realized we were getting 14.5%
Yeah.
increase across the board for everybody. I mean, it's the average. Someone up 20%, someone up 26 or 30%.
38%.
Oh, so crazy increases. The problem is,
the WVMT every day, and I can count on a caller or two just about every day saying, "Give me another 6 months. I'm out of here."
Yeah.
Tennessee, Carolina bound.
yeah, the issue is that we also had, because so many budgets were defeated, we had like $14 million or $40 million excess in the ed fund. So that was sitting there to be used. Then we had $77 million because the governor's goal was to get this done quickly. So he put in $77 million in his budget that we passed in the big budget.
Yeah.
And that was going to buy down the rates down to 1%.
To
Between those
1%.
two pots of money,
Which happened, which
is what we did.
Did
But
happen.
if you don't go and do something right now and do this consolidation and redistricting and appropriation reapportionment piece.
Yeah.
You're going to, and because this could be an off-ramp, we don't do and vote on this reapportionment piece, we will go back, it will kill the whole bill. So we will go back to where we're trying to go and figure out how to pay both for our increases that are part of our contracts and whatever, and for the $111 million that we put in to buy down. You know, when you buy it down, you create a cliff for the following year.
But
So-
then we had said you were happy to see the buy down. Without that, we would have been talking
Yeah.
It would have been-
8%.
And
Yeah.
it's really important to look forward because we put a foundation formula in. So our foundation formula is $15,033 per student. Instead of what we were paying currently is around $27,000 per student.
Well, that was the average. Yeah,
The average.
Yeah.
And there will be weights within that. So the 15 is your base number, but then there are other
Special education.
some other funds.
Yeah,
But it's really
disabilities.
important to know that what Lynn alluded to, what was it, 119 million or something?
I mean,
that
it
we
was,
paid
yeah,
down?
when you put those two numbers together, that's 111 or 115 million dollars that you're buying down for this year, this current year. But you
That
have
you
to
don't
make
have
that
next
up
year.
because your costs are still going to be there. And the House bill wanted to put all this off to 2030. Well, you know, we would have
The governor said, don't even.
He said-
But he did settle for 3. Didn't he want
He said
two
he
years?
had
Yeah.
some must-haves, and it was a foundation formula. Build the maps next year,
Yeah.
and this is implemented in 3 years.
Yeah.
And so we kind of stuck to that, and we stuck to our guns, and we got that. But you have to realize that 2 years ago we had an 8% increase in property taxes. Last year was a 13.8%. This year we saw a 6% increase. So every year we're seeing really big increases, and every year the 13.8% was really a 20% increase that we bought 7% down.
That was bought down.
So
Yeah,
then we were
they
in the
bought it
hole
down.
7%. So then we were in the hole again. So we are using a lot of money,
future money that we
future
don't
money,
have.
to buy down tax rates, and we're still seeing large increases with these buy downs. So the system has to be changed. We have to change how we fund education.
Yeah.
And with that money, $100 million, how many houses can we build with $100 million? How many infrastructure projects can we put in for wastewater and sewer?
How much
water
substance abuse and all kinds of other things that we have that are, the
fix in our
healthcare,
prisons.
the prisons,
They need,
the judiciary system and
yeah.
its backlog. I mean, the K-12 is sort of this sucking sound that's taking money out of all the other state agencies that really have needs, lots and lots of needs.
And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what we're looking at is like, we can keep buying these downs, but for how long? What's the increase going to be next year? So this foundation formula and this consolidation is going to really help Vermont taxpayers. So you say, is it going to be 2.3 billion? The governor's first proposal was like 13,000 per student, and now we're at 15,000. And I think that's going to keep us around where we will be going forward. So we might not see like a steep decline. It might be, but it's going to be a plateau. It's not, you're not going to see these high jumps that we've seen. And that's kind of what we're looking at.
And you know,
So it's
you've
like
been.
you'll take a plateau.
We'll take a plateau.
We'll take
instead
a
of those
plateau,
increases
yes.
every single
And
year.
there's cost containment in here that is, there's going to be a way to transfer some of these costs and they buy it down a little bit over a period of time, over 5 years. And the goal is to create cost containment, which is actually logical. I mean, if you have fewer students, and you probably have fewer schools, you will eventually have some schools. And
certainly
schools
have
have already
fewer schools.
closed. Yes, and schools have already closed. And if we don't do this, those schools will continue to close. People will vote down their budgets, and it'll be sort of a Wild West instead of a nice, orderly transition.
We're in a really good position in Franklin County. We've seen population increase. St. Albans Town has grown by 2,000 people in the last 20 years.
St. Albans Town now, of course, is the largest.
It's now the largest municipality in the
county.
county.
Yeah.
And we are going to look at issues where we're running out of room for our students in St. Albans Town. So that's not included in our deferred maintenance of $6 billion. We're looking at, we're still going to need to maybe expand or figure out within our county what's going to happen to all these
Isn't BFA down quite a number of students from years past?
Yes. Well, there were about 1,000 students at City School when my kids were there, and there was about 1,000 students at BFA, and City was the biggest chunk, City and Town, who have to go there.
Yeah.
They were the biggest chunk. The town is maybe hasn't grown as much as they anticipated. When I was on the BFA board, we were trying to anticipate how many students were going into the town and the city so we could plan.
Yeah.
At one point, BFA was up to 1,200 students when I got back on the board the second time.
wasn't at school.
But
And BFA now is.
it's like 800. I'm not sure
so
what the
way-
number
way-
is. These are just head counts.
So there's plenty of room at BFA, presumably.
Yes. And the city school is down quite a bit.
City school
It was
down.
down almost.
Is up.
Yeah, the town is
Tabs up.
They're almost equal, and I think the city's declining and the town is growing.
What
Not a
about
lot.
Fairfield?
Fairfield had they had declines. They had a little bit of, they had phantom students, what they used to call phantom students.
Phantom
under access.
students.
You paid for these students. It was 5%. If you lost 5% from your top level, they would pay you for these students that didn't exist. I mean, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's in our current law. That's how
I think they got rid of that. They got rid of
did.
it finally. Yeah.
I don't think that's a new
We
one.
haven't talked about those in a few
We,
years.
we
so, yeah,
finally
we
got rid of that, I think, in Act 46.
Yeah.
But the point is that we've had a foundation plan. I mean, you probably remember Madeline Kunin. She was going to be the education governor, and she created this foundation plan.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of requirements that you had to have in there. You had to have certain kinds of personnel. Everybody had to have a guidance counselor and a school nurse and all kinds of things, a librarian. Some schools didn't have all those things. You had to have certain kind of facilities, and everyone got up. We had all that state aid, construction aid that we put in that helped people fund these requirements. And everybody, city school had everything. It was 20 years ahead of its time. The town school had to add a big addition to do that and require these things to be there for your students. And we had the evaluation of our schools. That was a statewide evaluation. So we did these things under foundation. The problem was those were the gold towns. They had the big high grand list, and then everybody else. And there wasn't enough money to state aid to go and bring them up to where the gold towns were. Stowe could have a 10 cent per 100 on their tax base, their rate, and Sheldon at $2.45. And it was, it was out of whack. And the state never came through with the money. Now, we have rearranged all of that over the years with part of the Ed Fund and done other things that we now have access to be able to even that out.
And we have to be very cautious of that because we have the Brigham decision of 1997 that talks about those points that she talked about. Because in our state constitution, written in 1777, we have an obligation within that language to educate every student.
Yeah.
And when it comes to money, it has to be fair and equal across the board. But the system we have right now is not fair and equal across the board. You have some towns that are paying way too much and some that are paying not enough. And so we're trying to equalize that as well. And a foundation formula will help get a more equal playing field for every Vermonter.
Is it a given Franklin County will keep its 5 high schools? And you talk about maybe
I don't
getting
know.
Edisburg
Yeah.
and Richmond together?
No talks in committee at all about consolidation and what those will look like.
Yeah.
Those will come down to the school boards and what the school boards will find.
Yeah.
And they're going to be working heavily with the Secretary of Education. They're going to be working with the Agency of Education and everyone in the field. And the goal, we're not out there saying we need to close every small school and close it. We want to find out what is right within each municipality, and that's those school districts, what is right for every single student. Every student in the state of Vermont should get the same education as every other student, within reason, obviously.
Sure.
You're not going to have the same teachers or personnel in each one, but they should have as the same opportunities. This is really important to me. I've been on education for 7 years. I was the vice chair last year, not the vice chair, the ranking member.
Ranking member, yeah.
And
Aaron Brady was the vice chair.
and now we have Chris Taylor, who's done a fantastic job as vice chair.
The new Milton town manager.
Yeah, and he's
Is he going to hang in with?
Yes, they're very supportive.
Bruce Don Turner did the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's doing a great job, and he's done a really. He's very level-minded.
Huh.
If you have opposing viewpoints from each side, he can come right in, and he has a really level head, and does a great job.
Good to hear.
And he also worked in the school system prior to this.
Oh, is that
Did
right?
not belong to the union.
Oh, really?
But he was a behavioral interventionist. And
Interesting.
But I have 3 kids. I have 2 kids currently at Syntac.
Congratulations on
Yeah,
newest
thanks.
member of the family.
He just turned he turned a month old a week ago
I think
today.
I saw him when I saw you and your wife about a week into his life.
That's Franklin County politics, right? You run into you at Dollar Tree, and we set up an interview. And when they said they want to implement this in 2030, my oldest son's going to be in high school. He's in 5th grade right now. He'll be close to graduating by the time that happens. I want them to be able to access better educational opportunities quicker. That's why I aligned more with the governor's view on this instead of waiting it out. I understand it's going to take a couple of years because you do need. It is a big shock for some systems that are going to be like, wow, we are not going to be able to do the status quo. But the status quo is not working.
With the Franklin County delegation, 13 members or 2 senators, did everybody support this, or was there some division
we
in the
all did.
delegation?
We did.
I think we
there,
did.
there's some concerns from some members, and they're going to, and some of the concerns, and I'll say Representative Pango, because she is so invested on government operations.
Yeah.
This is going to fall heavily on her.
Yeah.
On her.
And does she get a vice chair? She got a vice chair of the
Vice.
No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. vice chair. I don't remember.
Anyway.
One of them. I think she's ranking if she's not vice
She's
chair.
top of the table, and she
She knows a lot about it.
knows a
though.
lot about it. She's been on school boards, and for her, it's going to be. They didn't touch our bill much this year to talk about the governance, and that's a huge thing. What governance will look like, elections, elected school board,
Districts.
what the districts. You have to make sure that those districts are all equally represented.
Wow.
Yeah, up between 4,000 to up between 4,000 and 8,000.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
And that gives you a broad range, but you have to be just like you do for your reapportionment. It's going to have to be sort of within a range that everybody has.
And so, like,
Yeah.
her concerns were like those concerns, and her rural communities, but that's what it looked like. So she can keep a close eye on this, because next year this will have to go to government operations to work on that governance piece.
Yeah, we have a redistricting task force, which has to have the 3 options available to us by December so we can vote. That's the first off ramp.
Yeah.
And that's the first big committee. Then we have the State Aid for School Construction Advisory Board, which will look. They don't guarantee any state aid or how it's going to be raised or how it's going to be
At this
distributed.
point, the state has not been throwing in
No,
anything.
we haven't been putting anything in state aid, construction aid.
So there's a moratorium since 2009 on.
Yeah, this was
It's 2009.
to help schools pay. They started at 20%, it went up to 30% during that foundation plan that Madeline Cunin created.
Yeah.
And, a lot of schools took advantage of it. And if you combined schools or if you combine districts, and we went through this with the city and town, whether we were going to create a unified K-12 or BFA, the whole thing. And we could have had more money for that, but for obvious reasons, it didn't work out at that point. But by the time it was 2009, probably, they said they had a long list of people who wanted money, and we just didn't have the money to give them. So what they did is they create first come, first serve, and they would give so much each year out of the capital bill.
Yeah, that came.
And by the time I got onto institutions in 2016,
That's
they were getting to the end, but there was still a few hangers on. But we didn't have the money to we made a promise we just couldn't keep, is what it basically came down to. So that was the end of the state aid, construction aid. And then, of course, after that, we had a statewide property tax where you pay for everybody everywhere, no matter where you live. So we really technically don't need a state aid to help you by the state. Everybody's helping, like we're all going to help pay for that Burlington High School or whatever high school,
what's
Colchester.
the price tag on that?
Oh,
Almost 100 mil or
200 million.
200. They're all there. Closer.
We also gave them from the state ARPA funds. There was like $32 million of remediation for
American Rescue
The PCB, yeah.
PCB. We gave 16 million out of that 32 million we had to that. So they got half of that. So we are spending a lot of money to and so when you see schools like Colchester, I believe that just approved a $100 million bond. South Burlington has been asking for years.
Well, they've been looking for it, yeah.
Yeah, Milton.
But they've been
needs
denied. They haven't gotten the bond passed, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
When you think of like MVU, of course, PFA goes back along. MVU is 1970 for.
Yeah,
You have to wonder how
1970.
these schools aren't going to last.
They
forever,
need it,
presumably.
and that's part of the problem too. When we look at education reform, they're making these decisions at the local level, and I think MVU wanted to. If you've ever been in their parking lot lately, you might as well go get an alignment after.
Yeah.
And they scratched that project because they couldn't afford to do it because they knew they wouldn't.
Yeah, the
couldn't
people
pass
in
the
the
vote.
communities are voting it down. And there's just so much that they're willing to pay.
Sure.
The taxpayers are
Understand that.
part of the piece of this. You have the students, you have the staff and the administration and the people who work in the building who make it happen, and then you have the taxpayers, and they all kind of sort of have common interests, but they also sometimes have different interests.
And of course, education funding is about 3/4 of one's tax bill.
Yes. Oh, big part. But we have the state school aid, construction aid. Then we have a special ed strategic team that is going to look at how we're dealing with special education. We have the Education Fund Advisory Committee. That's another one that's going to deal with how we do the financing. And then you have the regional assessment of the districts by the property evaluation and review group. And that's going to look at reappraisals. Basically, they want to go and make sure, if you want to build a school building or you want to refinance your school building to repair it or do it, there is going to be a review by the Secretary of Education, and you're going to be put on a priority list, and you're going to have to get approval before you can start doing anything. It's not like where we go and bond it and then we go and set up we do whatever you have to do to get your permits and then you build it. They're going to have the state approve it. This is one way of making sure that it isn't just willy-nilly, everybody's building new buildings all over.
Because $6 billion.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. We can't afford that. We don't have the money for that.
And there's a lot of things on this bill that we haven't even talked about. Technical centers, pre-K, special education. There's a lot of things that have to fall in this next year before we can implement any kind of change.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be hopefully a very productive year, but it sounds like there's a ton of work.
There's a ton of work to do.
A lot of work to do. And a lot of compromise. The reason why I was able to vote for this bill, because it was so different than what I had introduced and what had come out. The conference committee, so it passed the House, passed the Senate, but they didn't, at the end, you can say, we don't agree with what the Senate changed. We're going to send it to a conference committee. And in that committee conference, everyone got up from the table kind of like not very happy. They were like very, like they didn't get their way, but they got a little bit that they could, and they all shook hands on it.
Yeah.
And to me, that showed the fact that you had the Senate, the House, Democrats, Republicans, and the governor.
And the governor worked with them.
Yeah, all reluctant. Don't want to use the word reluctant, but they were like, okay. It showed me that they actually compromised and they did not draw lines in the sand, and they were actually able to give up a lot to get what they needed to pass the bill. Yeah. So for me, that was like the first time I've ever seen this in the legislature, where you had people walking away from the table not happy, but happy enough.
Yeah.
So
well, the same thing happened with the housing bill. The number I can't remember, but the housing bill had a similar dynamic. Yeah. This is where having more balance, those 20 people that we elected in the House.
And that was the word the Republicans just said. That was your big word, balance. More balance, and you got some.
You really needed. I know I talked to the chair of the General Housing Committee, and he said, he didn't want to create a bill that the governor wasn't going to support. Yeah. Not just because he didn't want to veto, but because he really didn't want to do something that was going to be, pushed through that the governor couldn't support. The governor has a lot of knowledge over all of his years between the Senate and being in the legislature and being in the administration.
The whole administration working on this every single day.
Yeah, they have.
We're just citizen legislators.
Yeah, and they're the ones who really implement it. And so he said, I want to make sure that whatever I do, I want to make sure the governor will sign this, and that we'll be involved and we'll approve of it. And so they did the same thing in the conference committee and the housing. We were all sitting outside watching the people going in and out down on the commerce committee. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3, they would come out and they would talk, and then they'd go back in, and it was interesting. But they came up with something that everybody agreed was a solution.
Because I think a lot of legislators, for the most part, a majority of the legislators wanted to work on housing, wanted to work on education reform, wanted to work on public safety. But how did we get there? We all had different ways of how to get there. So this balance was able to bring us to more compromise and everyone getting a little more, more people with a seat at the table, more voices being heard. And it came out like the census was, we don't want to pass something unless the governor is going to approve it.
Well, we really couldn't. But the other thing is that we had more people who were Republicans on all the committees. We had people who were vice chairs or people who were chairs who actually had a voice in who you brought in to testify, and there's a lot of, that give and take is really important because you can't really govern by ideology. I think we've proven that.
So I think the governor's got some more time. Where I was saying, had the Democratic supermajority stayed in place, I was just wondering how much longer the governor would want to hang. You got to think he's in better spirits with this. Would you expect him?
I think so.
On for re-election next year, for starters.
He will never play his cards.
He'll never. He'll talk about it after the session ends next year.
Yeah.
But I urge him every time I speak with him. Like, we got another 10 years out of you, and he laughs and walks away.
But he's got to think he's in better spirits just with Republicans cheering.
And he's really invested in
and
this.
And it sounds like he had been criticized pretty often for really not getting involved in that. He definitely jumped into that.
just to get this bill,
Yeah.
this 454, this Act 473,
Yeah.
to see it through.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sabotage
It's
it.
shaky
and,
at the end. I mean, this looked dubious right at the end.
and there's off ramps in here, several other off ramps. I mean, there's ways that you could undermine so it just doesn't go to the end.
And we worked really hard. He was pushing to get something passed, and we were, we had I remember we had a caucus meeting, and there was so many different viewpoints coming through, and we needed to make a decision in like minutes. We didn't have days, and so we worked all together to get, not everyone's 100% happy, and we're going to work on it. That's why we have these off ramps.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to see. I think I would love to see the governor. I think he wants to see this pass through. So I would love to see him stay on for as long as it takes to get an education reform in. But we, like I said, we passed housing, we passed military retirement, we passed education. So yeah, I think he's probably the happiest he's been since taking office.
Now, we also passed a healthcare thing that was similar to the education, where they're trying to create a way to maintain, wouldn't want to say cut costs, but to reduce the cost of our healthcare hospital. The hospitals are in their budget meetings right now.
Another huge issue. In fact,
Yes.
Northwestern, again, I know the consultant of the Green Mountain Care Board are going to get the Chronicle, the folks
Yes,
as well know.
yes.
North Country Hospital in Newport, totally freaking out. I mean, the
Yeah.
consultant made it sound like, we can
Oh, that was the
use
Oliver
you for
Wyman
something. but,
report. Yes.
Hey, if you're having a baby, just go down the road to St. Johnsbury.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Well,
Newport
there
folks
is a
totally
lot of
freaked out.
duplication, and we have, we have boutique prisons, we have boutique hospitals, we have boutique schools. I mean, everything. The mental health agencies are all little boutique county. The point of it is that we have a lot of very small institutions that just duplicate, and we're not that big a place. We're the size of a mid-sized city.
Yeah.
Right, about the size of about 640,000, just
Yeah.
a little under the
Yeah.
population of just the city of Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but-
it's a,
To your point, I just went through it. We had a kid. We had our
Not
baby
Northwestern.
at Northwestern Medical Center.
My kid came out of Northwestern.
They did a fantastic job. I can't say
Yeah.
anything nicer. Like it was fantastic. To lose that,
Yeah,
not to get too personal on it, but
yeah,
when we were like, oh, we're in labor, to when we gave birth,
yeah.
was we got at the hospital at 8:25 and she gave birth at 9:35.
Wow.
And so if I would have had to jump on the interstate and drive down to Burlington for that, so these are questions that healthcare, we don't have that much time to talk left, but healthcare is going to be probably front and center next year, because that's what drives costs up too. Education costs that's a big driver to education costs, big driver to businesses.
every employer.
Everyone is
we're talking
struggling
like
with it.
typically 15 to 20% increases for
Yeah.
healthcare somewhere in there.
Yeah.
There was,
Well, of course, you have Blue Cross Blue Shield. Of course, we got testimony on this. 1/3 of the state is on Medicaid.
One-third? One-third?
1/3. 1/3 of the state is on Medicare. That's the elderly. And so 1/3 is your commercial insurance. We have very high insurance coverage. The government programs cover a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that's 2/3 of your economy is covered by government programs. And they don't pay what it costs. And so Blue Cross Blue Shield which is primarily our commercial insurance, they have to make up the difference with the cost shift. And so they have to charge the people who buy the insurance to make up the difference.
Sure.
Plus they got involved in this thing called Medicare Advantage, which apparently they lost money on. So we have to sit, and they need 23% increase just to stay solvent. And what do you do if you can say, well, I'm not going to give you the money, but what would you do with that commercial insurance provider that's providing 90% of your commercial insurance? I mean, you have to find a way to keep them solvent.
It's not like they have to hang around here. They can say,
Well, they could go bankrupt. I mean, they could just, so it's a delicate balance, and the new bill that came in, S-126, which I don't know what the act is now.
Yes.
But that bill was there to go and create opportunities for the Green Mountain Care Board to be able to help hospitals examine their costs and why they were going up. And you saw, they were all looking at them. The medical center of UVM, they went and they laid off 77 people and didn't fill, so that is happening. That is part of what that bill was going to do.
wow.
The hospitals don't like it, but it's the same thing with the people in the schools who don't like it. They don't want to change it because they don't want to make the cuts. But that's what you have to do.
issue that came up, and again, I'm not hardly on top of this, and it almost sounded too good to be true, but I guess it passed easily. State Treasurer Mike Pichak, just the helping folks with a lot of medical debt in Vermont. And I think the legislature threw in like $1 million or something. But
Yes, it's $1 million.
Did you
Yeah, it's $1 million. It's $1 million for $100 million. It leverages another $100 million. It's a scheme with some group that you go and you put in $1 million, and then they will pay 10 cents on the dollar for the debt. Now, hospitals have a lot of debt anyway.
Sure.
People come in. Because they take Medicare, they have to accept anybody who walks in the door regardless of ability to pay. And of course, they lose money on patients with Medicaid and Medicare anyway.
Yeah.
And then there's the unpaid debt. And people who just are indigent, they come into the emergency room as whatever.
Yeah.
The point of it is that they're going to pay 10 cents on the dollar to the hospital. The hospital supported it.
And is that because that's better than
better than zero.
Better than nothing?
Yeah. Although it really doesn't solve the problem.
Doesn't solve the problem, but
So I don't know how much.
That got strong. I mean, it's
I think it passed with a voice vote. And I don't think it was
it was kind of a no-brainer.
Well, I can picture, Casey, you guys are way ahead of me, but if Phil Scott, at some point, he won't be governor forever. Easy for me to picture John Rogers and Mike Pichak in the next gubernatorial battle.
I can see that. It's always interesting to see who puts their names forward to run. It's a tough thing to run for any position. Put your name out there, so you give all the credit to everyone. But I mean, that looks like the
They
position.
should have a picture right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, we could, if the governor ever stops running, you could see, what was it, 2012, when you had like six.
Oh, sure. Might be a bunch of
Democrats and
and that whole slate of candidates. So
You'd expect Lieutenant Governor to certainly run for re-election next year.
I think so.
Well, I think he's going to
he's gonna
re-election. I think he enjoys the job.
Sounds like it. I've certainly heard him on radio a number of times.
Yep. Yeah, he's on. He does a monthly spot. I think
Yeah.
like the governor does on.
And actually, I give his predecessor, David Zuckerman, credit for doing the same show on TNT.
Yeah, he does
Nothing you have to tell you. He would invariably take a beating from I gave Zuckerman credit for doing that.
Yeah.
And anyway, of course, I hear him once in a while. WDEV, unfortunately, doesn't come in great up here on my car radio.
Right, it doesn't.
Guess he's got a Thursday show.
Yep.
DEV. I guess I should note, I heard from maybe Joe Luna, Representative Wayne LaRush, Franklin Republican state rep, it's already said, I guess, not running for re-election next year. But that's what Joe mentioned to me anyway.
Well, I asked
news
him
to you?
that. I asked him that, and he said, I'm not saying anything like that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I guess Joe is chairman of the Franklin County Republican Committee. I think Joe told me that, but
Wayne is on appropriations with me.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
He's really good.
I had a good talk with Wayne at the Franklin Town meeting, having not gone to Highgate for the first time forever because they went to all Australian ballot.
Yeah.
So I happened to talk to Wayne, had a good talk with him at lunch at the town meeting. So you're not so sure?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
he told me, he goes, I'm not going to make any announcement like that.
No, interesting.
He's what was he, former
Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife.
Right.
He knows the dollars and cents. They put him on appropriations.
Oh, so he's it's the two Franklin.
So we have
County
two
folks
Franklin
on there.
people on appropriations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One other note, again, you may be aware of this, but former Judge Greg Rainville lives in Georgia, a Democrat, of course, planning to run for the state Senate next
is he
year.
really?
I heard him.
He thought about it this year, but he said, Richard, I'm going to be running as a moderate Franklin County Democrat.
Yeah.
But no, I think you'll see great jumping on. Would you expect Randy, Senators Brock and Norris to run for re-election?
I would. I haven't heard anything.
Haven't heard.
Yeah.
So you're not aware of anybody who's
Nobody's
not
making
running
any-
again?
Yeah.
And part of the job of the assistant minority leader is checking in with people on this, and I haven't heard anything like that. But again, that's also something that they will take on themselves. But I know Senator Brock and Senator Norris quite well. I've worked with Senator Brock since 2008.
Yeah.
Senator Norris, his wife is my mom's first cousin.
Oh, really?
I got the nickname Bob.
You got to love Franklin County.
I got the nickname. My nickname is Bob, and it's because of him from 35 years ago. And and I've heard good things. I've heard, it's been normal with them, and they've done a great job representing Franklin County and Alberg in the Senate.
Albury. Got to go. Hey, many thanks to Republican reps Casey Toof and Lynn Dickinson. And Casey, you're of course in St. Albans, live in St.
I live in Southtown. Yep.
St. Albans, Tower. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, well, thank
Thanks
you,
to my
Richard.
producer, Alan Cunningham. Appreciate his efforts. Thanks for joining us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.